falloir faire quelque chose.
Faut réunir d'autres victimes.
They traveled through 3 decades, ending up in 1968, changed forever.
Love is a stream. It's continuous.
From a controversial film about pedophilia in the Catholic Church to an immersive art film experience in Soviet Russia, welcome to France 24's film show. I'm joined by our film critic, Lisa Nesselson. Hi, Lisa.
Hello there.
First, a French judge has given the green light for François Ozon's film By the Grace of God to be released in French cinemas this week. The film, which won the Grand Jury Prize in Berlin, portrays Bernard Prenat, a priest accused of molesting dozens of boys during the 1980s and 1990s. He's due to face trial sometime this year. His lawyers unsuccessfully argued that the film would prejudice his court case. Emerald Maxwell tells us more.
Grand Jury Prize goes to Grâce à Dieu, de François Ozon, By the Grace of God.
The film recounting paedophilia in the French church got a nod from the industry in Berlin. And on Monday, the court gave the green light to its cinema release. By the Grace of God recounts the battle of French abuse victims to have their attacker removed from his position and tried. It begins as one of the victims, now a grown man and father, discovers the priest who molested them as scouts was back in his congregation and working with children again. The film gives the name of the priest accused of assaulting more than 80 children, Bernard Prenat. He's the one who wanted the movie banned until the end of his trial. But the movie makers believe that's a way of censoring the victims.
The facts are so serious. What we've suffered was so bad. The consequences were so devastating that we shouldn't be scared to talk about it. Because this could encourage other victims and it could bring change to the way the law and society deal with paedophiles.
The victims didn't just take on their predator, but also the church, which they say covered up the abuse and allowed it to continue. The Cardinal of Lyon, Philippe Barbarin, was tried for failing to report the abuse to authorities. Barbarin, though, denied covering it up, and the prosecution said he shouldn't be sentenced.
The verdict on the Barbarin trial is expected on March the 7th. Lisa, here in Paris, everyone has been talking about an immersive art and film experience called DAO, an ambitious and costly round-the-clock project that began a decade ago when thousands of people agreed to live and work in a mock Soviet society and be filmed in character doing so. Tell us more about the result.
Well, DAO has gotten some pretty nasty reviews, but I shall be forever grateful that I got to experience it. And I recommend it to anybody with an attention span who thinks they can go a day without their cell phone, because those are confiscated at the entrance. It's an immersive multimedia experience, but it's never the same thing twice. It's true that there were technical glitches the first week, but there was so much to choose from at any given moment that I don't really think it's legitimate to gripe about how this or that door was closed. I did 2 separate 8-hour visits over the course of 2 days. The offerings were completely different on each visit. So basically, over a period of years, thousands of people volunteered to time travel back to the USSR between the 1930s and the 1960s. The now 43-year-old director started out to make a film about award-winning Soviet scientist Lev Landau, so Dao is the last syllable of his last name. He ended up, shall we say, embellishing his ambitions. He auditioned an astonishing 392,000 people to participate, to find the heads he wanted. 40,000 vintage costumes were located. 12,000 square meter set was built in the middle of the Ukraine, and 400 principal characters gave up their real lives to live there in character, some for years on end. They also relinquished their privacy. World-class German cinematographer Jürgen Youngus, who worked with Fassbender, Wim Wenders, Michael Haneke, found a way to light the meticulously authentic Soviet-era set so he could film from any angle. And the amazing thing is he doesn't understand Russian, so his instincts about where to point the camera at any given moment I found dazzling.
So you were saying over a period of several years, he shot 700 hours of 35 millimeter film.
Yes, and they've kept all those rushes and will be doling them out to us, I guess. From them, 13 feature films have been edited together so far. I was able to view about 9 hours worth. The films have that scary knock on the door in the middle of the night vibe that we sort of associate with that era. There's a great deal of sex. Real people really having sex.
Wow.
What comes across is that in the USSR, and this may be a cliche, the options were working, informing on your colleagues, drinking vodka, and having sex. While I found the film sometimes riveting, sometimes boring, sometimes upsetting, what I will never, ever forget are the life-sized silicone mannequins of the main characters in the film, which were scattered throughout the venue. So unnervingly lifelike. You could walk right up and touch them. They had actual glass eyes that had been vintage ones that had been worn by real humans, and they seemed to follow you with their gaze. In the section called Communism, real Russians were recruited to live in replicas of typical Soviet communal apartments, so you could wander in, leaf through a magazine from the 1950s, get dripped on by woolen underwear on a clothesline, and talk to a real Russian. When the installation next goes to London, I suggest you buy at least a 24-hour pass. The food was cheap and good, and I don't know if you can see this, but I'm thrilled to have purchased these very special spoons that seem to have a hammer and sickle in them.
Might be hard to eat soup with those spoons, though. The city of Paris agreed to house Dao in 2 theaters that are being renovated, the Théâtre du Châtelet and the Théâtre de la Ville, and there was a mock Soviet-era apartment at the Pompidou Center. How did they fund all of this?
Well, apparently a very wealthy Ukrainian fellow wrote them a blank check. Some people think that that's questionable, but I'm all for patrons of the arts wherever we can find them. And I do think that the array of negative reviews probably stemmed from the fact that reporters were assigned to assess something quickly that involves patience and time. I say, see it if you can.
All right. Lisa, the French-Canadian writer-director Denys Arcand is back with a social comedy set in Montreal. Tell us about the rather intriguingly titled The Fall of the American Empire.
It had to happen. This is a dark, slow burn comedy about social inequality and beating criminals, both blue-collar and white-collar, at their own game, and it is very, very enjoyable. Our unlikely hero is Pierre Paul. He has a doctorate in philosophy, but he works delivering packages from a truck because, as he puts it, in the modern world, intelligence isn't an advantage, it's a handicap. There's ongoing debate in the film about whether money can buy happiness, but one fine day, Pierre Paul pulls into the parking lot of a seemingly deserted strip mall, arriving just in time to witness a violent holdup gone terribly wrong. Several men have been shot, and there are 2 duffel bags overflowing with cash abandoned on the ground for the taking, so he takes them.
As you do. Let's take a look at the film.
Bonjour, Monsieur Bigras. Est-ce que je peux aller vous reconduire?
À quel honneur?
J'ai besoin d'aide, j'ai vraiment trop d'argent.
On va commencer par savoir de combien d'argent tu parles.
C'est 2 gros sacs de sport remplis de cash.
T'as pas de bon sens, de gaulliste.
T'as besoin de moi autant que j'ai besoin de toi.
Écoute-moi bien, là, parce que je le répéterai pas. Tu changes rien dans ta vie. Même horaire, même vêtements, tu t'achètes pas de voiture.
T'as vu trop de films, toi?
Je suis pas un avocat, moi je suis un criminel, je suis honnête. La police cherche toujours d'abord l'argent.
La boutique où il y a eu le hold-up, la caisse de dépôt de la gang de l'Ouest, c'est pas des enfants de cœur.
Where's the money?
Pourquoi vous me dites tout ça?
Pour que vous sachiez à quoi vous êtes mêlés. La personne qui l'a volé va se faire descendre tôt ou tard, c'est une question de temps.
Now, Lisa, I've often asked myself what I'd do with millions of tax-free dollars. Does this movie have any useful pointers for us?
Actually, it does. Of course, the people the money belongs to would very much like it back, and they are not nice. The police would also like to know who has it. Pierre Paul puts the bags in a storage locker and gets in touch with a famous criminal who has just been released from prison and who is known as the Brain. Pierre Paul meets an unusual call girl. Slowly but surely, they figure out what to do with millions upon millions of Canadian dollars without getting killed or caught by the authorities. The suspense is delicious.
Now, the film is the last of a sort of informal trilogy that began with the decline of the American Empire in 1986 and then the barbarian invasions in 2002, isn't it?
That's true. Those films won more awards than you can shake a bottle of maple syrup at, but you don't have to have seen them to enjoy this. And of course, as a Canadian, Arcand has always been interested in the bad habits of his country's neighbor to the south, where money is the arbiter of all things. I love the poster with the Statue of Liberty hiding, money and weapons behind her back.
All right. The American independent filmmaker John Cassavetes died 30 years ago. But strangely, his legacy has been kept alive, not in his native USA, but here in France, hasn't it?
Indeed it has. His film Love Streams was just re-released in a restored print. Imagine my surprise when I started reading the cover story in the new issue of French Vanity Fair, which is about 10 young actresses in their 20s who are considered talents to watch. They asked each of them for their favorite film and their favorite actress, and out of 10, 4 of them mentioned a Cassavetes film, either Opening Night or Love Streams, and cited Cassavetes' actress wife Jenna Rollins as their favorite actress. Now that is staying power. This lively book, The Impossible Mr. Cassavetes, just came out in French. Some historians contend that his 1959 film Shadows really started the new Hollywood. He made movies on his own with his friends. I learned that he also inadvertently invented what we now call crowdfunding. He had the idea for Shadows, mentioned it on a New York radio program. The host said, wouldn't it be great if potential viewers could fund the movies they want to see, and suggested everyone send in $1. They got $2,000 in 2 weeks and were able to start making the movie. Cassavetes earned the money to make his personal projects with his friends by acting in Hollywood movies and TV shows. And something I was astonished to learn was that Robert Redford, who is being honored this week by an honorary César at the French Film Awards, was actually Polanski's original choice, or the producer's original choice, to play Mia Farrow's husband in Rosemary's Baby. So Robert Redford, John Cassavetes, a very, very different effect.
Thank you, Lisa. Let's leave you with a taste of Love Streams by John Cassavetes. Remember our website, France24.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Stay tuned. There's more coming up on France 24 after this.
Over here, around here. Stand by there. I want to take your picture. Okay?
Mom, you're not funny.
Come on. Smile. Smile. Hey, smile. Jack, look this way. This way. Here you go. That's it. Here we go. Here we go.